Hey, what's up guys, this is Tariq here from smartbytrainers.com. So, the Sufferfest today officially released its new FTP RAMP test called Half Monty. FTP, or functional threshold power, in cycling is the highest average power measured in watts you can sustain for a full hour. This value is then used to set your training zones and your workouts intervals and measure improvement. However, doing a 60-minute time trial to measure FTP is something most people cannot do for a number of reasons. If you're doing it outside, you have to deal with traffic, stop signs, and just safety in general. And if you are testing indoors, going for a full hour indoors at that kind of effort has its own psychological challenges and can be mentally draining as well. So, other shorter tests were developed to try to estimate your FTP, and the most commonly used one is a 20-minute FTP test. However, even the 20-minute FTP test can be difficult to properly pace, particularly for inexperienced cyclists. So some started looking into this RAMP test. It's a much shorter test, not mentally as draining as the full hour test or 20-minute test, and there is no pacing to worry about here. Especially if you use a smart trainer, you can just set the trainer in erg mode and just let it do the work for you. Well, you still need to do the work yourself, but the trainer will automatically adjust the resistance for you. TrainerRoad started using the RAMP test as their primary FTP test in all their training plan almost 2 years ago. And Zwift also have a slightly different variation of this test which you can do. Both of them take 75% of your peak 1 minute average power to measure your FTP. Not this new Half Monty from the Sufferfest. In this video, I'll walk you through this new FTP test and I'll share my FTP results with you. And also, I went and I did that full 20-minute 4DP test as well to compare the results, and I'll share my finding with you later in this video, so make sure you stick around for that. But before I get into the details of the new RAMP test, if you find this video helpful, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button, and it helps the channel a lot that way. And if you want to learn more about indoor cycling and how to best use your smart trainer, consider subscribing to this channel. Okay, according to the Sufferfest, analysis of tens of thousands of full frontal 4DP fitness tests by our sports scientists has shown that this simple formula does not take into account athletes who are more anaerobically fit, resulting in FTP estimates that are inaccurate for 20% of athletes. So the Sufferfest developed its own RAMP test, and it is divided into 3 sections. A pre-RAMP lead-in section that includes few small efforts, then the RAMP section. Then it is followed by this black hole of nothing, and that is a 20-minute sub-maximal tempo effort determined by an athlete's heart rate. Then they analyze the relationship between the heart rate and the power and calculate your FTP results for you. The Sufferfest claims 93% accuracy. That 20-minute section, by the way, is not that hard. It's not your typical 20-minute that you do when you do an FTP test. It's a lot easier to go through. The other cool thing about this test is it's adaptive, meaning the app dynamically monitors your performance during the test and display personalized text for you. So after you go through that RAMP section, you'll get a heart rate range for your 20-minute effort. Then based on those 2 values, they will calculate your FTP for you. So this past week, I decided to give this test a try. Actually, I did the Half Monty test. Then 2 days later, I followed it with the full 4DP test because, you know, hashtag quarantine life, I got nothing else to do, but I wanted to do this because I wanted to see how close the RAMP test results to their 4DP FTP test. So a few things you will get from the Half Monty test. By the end of the test, you will get 3 metrics. The maximal aerobic power, and this is the power that you can lay down to create a breakaway, like in long sprints, and predict how hard you can push towards an end of a race. The functional threshold power, that's your FTP, and lactate threshold heart rate. It's not as thorough as the Sufferfest 4DP FTP test. With the 4DP test, you get 4 different metrics and your rider profile, whether you are a time trialist, sprinter, attacker, etc. The RAMP test starts you off with a pre-RAMP lead-in with some short efforts to warm you up. After that, you get to the RAMP section and off you go. The goal here is to go through each step until you fail and cannot pedal anymore. If you have a smart trainer, it's best to use erg mode here, so your trainer will ramp up the resistance for you on its own as you go through each 1-minute section. If you are on a dumb trainer, you will just have to manually adjust the resistance as you go through each step, and just stop as soon as you cannot hit the power target anymore. The ramp starts you off at 50% of your maximal aerobic power value that you have set in the app. If you do not have that value set in the app, you can just set it at a very low value, or just go through the questionnaires the Sufferfest asks you usually when you sign up. Each step increases by 7%. Those increases happen every 1 minute until you fail and you can no longer pedal. Once you are done with that part, you will get your new maximal aerobic power value and your lactate threshold heart rate. No FTP results yet. You'll get a chance to recover, and then you will get a heart rate range to ride at during the heart rate constrained 20-minute section. Mine was between 149 and 154 beat per minute. In this section, you're asked to switch your smart trainer from erg mode to level mode. And this is important to do, guys, because there is no power value here. It's all based on your heart rate, but the app will give you an estimated power value based on your map. So the power value I received to ride was 216 watts. Again, this value is just an estimate, and mine was way too low. I just could not get my heart rate anywhere close to 149 riding at 216. So I increased my power to closer to 50 to 60 to get my heart rate at the range and stay at that range during the 20-minute effort. That's it. Once you are done riding, they will do their science and you will get a report of your FTP results. So some people argue the ramp test is not as valid or as good as a 20-minute test. Some argue that the only way to get an accurate FTP is by going and do the full hour test. These are all valid points, and yes, every test is different, and even if you do the same test twice, you might get two different results. A lot of variables play into these tests that can affect your FTP results. But I took the bait, and to validate the results from the ramp test, I went back 2 days later to do the full frontal FTP test and see how close I get to the value I received from the ramp test. Now, before I show you the results from both, keep in mind that FTP results can vary for a number of reasons. In my case, I slept okay before the ramp test. I had a slight soreness in my legs, but overall felt decent. The second test, I had a 1 day to recover, and I did running speed work, so that could have affected the results a little bit. I only had 5 hours of sleep before the second test, and to be honest with you, I was not motivated or that motivated to do an FTP test just for the sake of testing an FTP test. But I did it anyway for you guys. All right, let's get the results. The half Monty, I ended up with 286 watts FTP. So that was up 20 watts from the last time I tested, which was a while ago. That was during a very long off season. And 286 watts for me is a good FTP. So of course, I was a little skeptical, especially I'm not really training for anything. I'm just quarantined here and I have no races on the schedule. And I just do not feel as fit. My lactate threshold was 162. Now, onto the 20-minute test. The Sufferfest flagged the results for me because that 5-minute power was less than the 115% of my 20-minute FTP power, and they suggested to manually decrease my 20-minute power by 2 to 3%. Either way, I clearly did not put 100% effort into the second test, but the numbers were interesting. My lactate threshold was down to 159, and my FTP came in at 283. So I was only off by 3 watts. Even if I follow the recommendation and lower my FTP or my 20-minute results by 3%, I'm still off by a little over 3%. So what do you think, guys? Do you think the ramp test is just as good? There are a lot of opinions around the validity of the ramp test. I am not a scientist and I'm not a coach, but I personally think the ramp test has its place. Some athletes can perform the ramp test better than others. Generally, the ramp test can overestimate FTP for anaerobically fit cyclists and underestimate it for aerobically strong cyclists. I personally think what the Sufferfest did here is somewhat unique. They're basically estimating your maximal aerobic power from the ramp portion of the test and combining that data with your 20-minute sub-maximal effort based on your own heart rate to better estimate your FTP. So they still developed a test that isn't as psychologically draining, yet not your typical ramp test, and just taking 75% of your best 1-minute power. I personally think there is no perfect FTP test. Every athlete is different and results can change by the day, week, month, and year. I think the best test is the one that provides you the most accurate representation of your metabolic system and your fitness, not the one that gives you the highest FTP value so you can just use it to brag to all your friends. Okay, that's all I have. Hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to like it if you did, and if you are still watching and have not subscribed yet, then you know what to do. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next video.